Hello, my name is Jen Eller. I am a Nantucket High School graduate and currently the school committee chair. On behalf of my fellow committee members, we would like to congratulate all of our 2020 graduates for your hard work, dedication, and perseverance. We also want to thank all of the people who have helped you along the way, including family, teachers, TAs, guidance counselors, coaches, administrators, and the superintendent of Nantucket Public Schools. In particular, the school committee would like to take a moment to recognize Nantucket High School Principal, Dr. John Buckey, and Superintendent Michael Kozort. John joined our district in 2008. One of his first initiatives was to create a physically and emotionally safe and welcoming environment so students could focus on their high school journey and look forward to their future. He was named Massachusetts High School Principal of the Year in 2012 and president of the Massachusetts School Administrators Association in 2018. John's leadership has always been strong and well thought out. John implemented policies that would offer choice and independent decision-making for his students. One example of that is John's support with registration for honors and AP classes. John has always led with a calm, professional, and organized approach. We are forever grateful to you, John, for making our school what it is today. We would like to take this opportunity to thank you for all that you have brought to our community and all that you have done for our students. We wish you well with your new position as superintendent at Marblehead Public Schools. Michael Kozort, former superintendent of school for Shaker Regional District in Belmont and Canterbury, New Hampshire, and a former New Hampshire Superintendent of the Year, chose to come to Nantucket because he believed that he could help make a difference. He has dedicated the last 10 years of his career to Nantucket Public Schools. His genuine care and concern for our students is evident in his involvement. Mike has made it a priority to attend and participate when he can in all school events, from chaperoning off-island trips, attending Whalers home games, theater, music concerts, parent nights, math nights, badminton tournaments, fifth grade basketball staff versus student games, and we can't forget about recess time when he can be found kicking soccer balls around with the students. Mike has been accessible to our students, teachers, parents, and community, and has always made the time to meet and discuss when issues or concerns arise. We are so appreciative to Mike for staying on board with us for one more year to acclimate and mentor Dr. Beth Hallett, our incoming superintendent. With the challenges that have surfaced this past year, we think Mike and Beth might agree they were happy to have each other. Mike, you have done us proud. Your level of involvement and commitment is admirable and will be missed. We wish you the very best in your upcoming retirement. We want to conclude by thanking both John and Mike for your devotion to our students and school. We wish you and our graduates success for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. That was well done and well said. May I call to order the school committee meeting, June 22nd, 2020. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And that was Steve Sotovic. Thank you. May I have a second?
Butler, second.
Zona Butler, thank you, second. All in favor? I will do a roll call. Jen Eller?
Aye. Jen.
Zona Butler? You're muted, Zona.
Sorry, here, Zona Butler.
Okay. Steve Sotovic?
Aye.
Tim Lepre? You're muted, Tim.
Aye.
Thank you. And Pauline Proch, aye. Thank you. What a great way to start our meeting, but a very sad one. And I won't add too much more to sending John and Mike off. But as Jen said, and well said, that we truly appreciate you both, and our school won't be the same without you. And we do wish you well and look forward to particularly John coming back and visiting with us and filling us with his stories. And Mike, we'll look forward to seeing what you do to fill your 24-hour days now after you retire on Friday. At this point, I'm going to read the COVID-19 requirements for this meeting, and then I will open it up for public comment. So if you want to open that up while I'm reading this, Beth, that would be great. This is Pauline Proch, Chair of the Nantucket School Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on this agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Please remember to unmute yourself. Jen Eller, Vice Chair.
Aye.
Tim Lepre.
Aye.
Zona Butler.
Aye.
Steve Sordovic, Secretary.
Aye.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Superintendent Michael Kozort.
Aye.
Deputy Superintendent Elizabeth Hallett.
Aye.
School Committee Clerk Logan O'Connor.
Aye.
Director of Technology Jennifer Erickson.
Aye.
Athletic Director Chris Morey. Chris, are you muted? Chris, are you there? Chris Morey, can you just say the affirmative? Just unmute yourself and confirm you're present and can hear me. Chris is muted, but has given me a sign that he can hear us, or can hear me. Director of Special Services, Michelle Bobert.
Present.
Thank you. Good evening. This open meeting of Nantucket School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus, in order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, Nantucket School Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom app, as posted on the town website, identifying how the public may join. I would just like to end too that we have a full array of our administration present at this meeting. I did just call off the names who will be presenting tonight. Okay, I'm going to give some time for public comment. Beth, do we have anything coming in? No public comment yet. Okay. To give it a little bit longer, and if the committee would permit, I would like to introduce the opportunity of public comment after our presentations of discussion. Do I have any opposing if we opened up public comment after the presentations? Zona Butler?
I oppose.
You oppose?
I do.
Tim Lepre?
I think it is dangerous because it can prolong the meetings.
So that's an oppose?
Qualified.
Okay, thank you. Steve Sordovic?
I'm in favor.
Okay, Jen Eller?
Oppose.
Okay, so that doesn't move. We won't be opening public comment after presentations. Thank you, everybody. So let's move on forward, please, to the annual athletics update and invite Mr. Chris Murray, our athletic director, to lead us through his presentation. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Pauline. Just want to make sure you can hear me okay. I was having a little trouble getting unmuted before, but I think I'm all set.
You're good, Chris. We can hear you. I think you may have frozen now.
During the year, and we had 154 middle school students. Now, those numbers do include the spring season. All of our athletes had registered and were on file at the point of the COVID virus coming in and shutting down the school, so I have included those in those numbers. On the sheets that follow, and which you have, you can see breakdowns by season and by level of play. I won't go through all of those numbers. For games and matches that were played, we played a total of 457 games and matches throughout the course of the year at 3 different levels of play: the varsity level, JV level, and middle school level. 217 of those games were played on Nantucket, were home games, and 240 of those games were played with our teams traveling. In addition to those, we had 20 state tournament level games that were played. Those were all played over in America. Again, there's a breakdown there that shows you just exactly how the games were played by season and by the different levels of play. You can look at that on your own. Want to talk a little bit about some of the athletic successes that we had. You'll see the winning percentage for this year went down significantly over last year. We were at even 500 as far as winning percentages go. But with the expansion of the Cape and Islands League, many of our teams were competing against larger schools, much tougher competition. And that is really the reason that you saw that drop from a standpoint of, the level of play with our kids. The increased competition was a plus, and the way that our teams perform really is not indicated by that win-loss percentage. We had 5 of our 14 varsity level teams for the first 2 seasons of play, fall and winter, who won league championships: varsity football, co-ed golf, boys ice hockey, and boys and girls swimming all won league championships. 12 out of the 14 teams, varsity teams that played for the fall and winter seasons, qualified for state tournament play, both boys and girls soccer, both boys and girls cross country, football, golf, volleyball, boys and girls basketball, boys and girls swimming, and boys ice hockey all qualified for state tournament level play. Some individual team successes. Our varsity football program for the first time advanced to the sectional final round of the playoffs. State of Massachusetts, MI, introduced a new playoff format 5 years ago. We have been in that state playoff each of those 5 years, but this was the first time that we had advanced to a sectional final round. In getting there, they had a rough start with a 3-0 start, but then ran off 4 consecutive wins as we got into league play. That included a win in the Island Cup game against Martha's Vineyard, over on Martha's Vineyard, which is the 4th consecutive year that we have won that game and retained that cup. As we got into state playoffs, we actually played 2 teams that had beat us in non-league games early in the season, both Mashpee and Cohasset, and beat them quite handily. So that particular group had a great season, did a great job, finished off their year with a home game against Coral Cassidy, which has become our Thanksgiving game. We introduced that game because with the Martha's Vineyard moving to the Cape and Islands League, we lost the Island Cup as the last game of the season. So that Island Cup game now gets played as a league game in the month of October. So we picked up Coral Cassidy as a Thanksgiving opponent, and we plan to continue that moving forward. The Whaler golf team completed an undefeated season, going 14-0, winning the Lighthouse Division of the Cape and Islands League. A terrific season for all those young men. Again, our swim programs, both boys and girls, had another banner year. Girls swim team finished 7th at the South Sectional meet and 9th at the state meet. It's the 7th consecutive year that our girls program has finished in the top 10 in the state finals. The boys swim team finished 2nd, both at the sectional level and at the state meet level. At the state meet level, we took home 11 championship swimming medals, which is obviously a terrific accomplishment for that program. Tyler Rothke earned 4 of those, Grant Beebe 3, Aiden Roberts 2, Jared O'Connor 1, and Kevin Johnson 1. 4 of our boys swimmers were named by the Boston Globe as all scholastic for boys swimming, and Tyler Rothke was named as the Boston Globe's Division II Athlete of the Year for boys swimming. So great reputation by our boys and girls swim team as far as representing both our swim program and our
Lose Chris.
So those kids were very excited about that. They had a great year. Boys basketball team had a great run in state tournament play. Boys basketball team is one team that accepted the challenge of moving to that larger division in the Cape and Islands League against those larger schools. And they found that competition to pay off as they made a nice run in state tournament play, making it to the semifinal round. Academic successes. We awarded 144 certificates for honor roll status to student athletes for the first 2 seasons of play for the fall and the winter. We awarded 39 plaques for principals list status during those same 2 seasons of play. Overall, our athletes had a GPA of 3.69. The academic standards are something that we have pushed, something that we're very proud of, and something that we are excited to continually see on the rise. We offer a academic probation plan for student athletes that are failing courses, and the good news there is that we had to put very, very few student athletes on those academic probation plans this year. All of our athletes right across the board seem to really be into the academic standards that we set. As we do each year or each season, we award the highest GPA to a team for each season. For the fall season, it was the girls soccer team with a combined or cumulative GPA of 4.02. For the winter season, it was the girls swim team with a cumulative GPA of 4.14. A few points of interest from an athletic standpoint. Cape and Islands League, the expansion of the Cape and Islands League was finally completed at the end of last year, and this is the first year that we had moved all the 5 larger schools into the league. The expansion of the Cape and Islands League has been an ongoing project for me for 9 years that I can tell you that I'm thrilled to have seen it all come together. It's going to be a positive not only for our school but all the area schools. There are a lot of positives that have and will come out of this, ranging from giving us a stronger voice at the state level to making it easier for us to schedule games within an area that's easier for us to travel, which cuts travel time, cuts our costs, and also helps from a standpoint of lost time learning for our student athletes. We changed our format for awards this fall. We only had the 1 season to test that because of the coronavirus shutting things down, but we we felt that it was a big success. We had a single award ceremony for all of our sports teams, recognized them all in the same evening, had a format that worked, where we were actually able to recognize 300 athletes in just over a little hour's worth of time. We got a lot of positive feedback from parents, from student athletes, and also from the coaching staff that really liked the idea of having everybody together for that, so that everybody could see the different athletes that received awards. A big part of that was we put together a printed program book that was sent out, or was available to everybody as they saw that. That also was a big hit with everybody that was in attendance. Individual accomplishments, Malika Phillip, who is one of our better female athletes, was recognized in a couple different sports this year. As a volleyball player, she was recognized at the state level, being named as an all-state selection. And then in girls basketball, she became the 10th Whaler basketball athlete to have her name put up on that 1,000-point banner. For our Winter Sports Awards, we had to go remote, go virtual, and I will tell you that both Mr. Lombardi and I are learning more and more about technology all the time. And so what we did with our Winter Sports Awards was to put together a slide presentation that included each team, all the awards for each team. It had written comments from myself and each of the coaches, and also had voice comments from myself and all the coaches. Not the normal award ceremony that we like to see, but it certainly served its purpose, and it was well received by all of our winter athletes. We did receive the shipment of the hard winter awards, and we actually passed them out to all of our athletes last week. We had a table set up in front of the school where they came and picked them up. The ones that didn't get picked up, we set up, and we have delivered them to all the athletes, so they all have received their awards. Lastly, I want to mention a certain one of our athletes, Tyler Rothke, who has been a swimmer at NHS for 4 years. Tyler has been not only an exceptional Tyler's going to move on to swim at Boston College, hopefully starting in the fall next year.
Chris, may I just interrupt you? Chris, may I
Sure.
just interrupt you? Did everybody else hear what Chris said, or did he cut out on you too? Chris, may I ask you to go back to the beginning of Tyler Rothke, please, because you cut out for a while. Thank you.
Just let me know if you're hearing me okay now.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. So what I started to do was to talk.
Chris, we lost your sound again. I don't know if you can hear us, but you're frozen.
It's been happening the whole time. The person from the town, can they tell us what's happening? Because Jen dropped off too. She got kicked out.
I know she's rebooting. Oh, I think she might be, no, she's trying to get back in. Chris, I'm
We
sorry.
can't hear you at all now.
Would you like me to pick up?
You hear me now?
We can hear you now. If you could start with Tyler Rothke, we could hear you up until then.
Okay.
Thank you.
If it happens again, I'll try and switch over to my phone, because it seems like the internet is drifting in and out here a little bit. Tyler Rothke obviously is one of the better student athletes that we've ever seen at Nantucket High School. He deserves a lot of credit from a standpoint of his work ethic and his dedication to his sport of choice. Aside from being a very good student athlete, he's just a very, very good young man. I'm sure that any of you that have met him or know him, he stands out. And I think one of the greatest things about Tyler is the fact that he carries a level of humility that I think is terrific. Tyler just knows who he is. He goes about his business, he conducts himself very, very well, and he's been a great mentor and role model for a lot of our younger players. You'll see in these sheets, I mean, he has continued throughout his career to set record after record after record. And I mean, in National Interscholastic Association, Swim Coaches Association All-American, to the best of my knowledge, he's the only Nantucket High School athlete that has ever achieved that kind of honor. He's a 4-time state champion, 4-time sectional champion, 5 new school records, Boston Globe Athlete of the Year, and the list just goes on and on. Certainly a very good young man and somebody that has represented himself, our school, and our community very, very well. So now we get into the fun stuff when we talk about COVID-19. COVID-19 happened to hit our school district right at the time that we were going to be starting our spring sports programs. Obviously, we had everything in place. Everybody was ready to roll on that Monday, but unfortunately, we had to put on the brakes, and with school being shut down, we were delayed. We went through 2 delays where we pushed back the start of the spring season. In both those delays, we went to work, we restructured everything to reschedule all of our games, transportation, officials. We stayed in touch and communicated with our coaches, student athletes, and parents all through that period to try and keep everybody as upbeat and positive as we possibly could. We worked with Matt Hunt, worked with me to set up a program through a company called Platform Athletics. It was an online service where kids could go online and be part of a conditioning program to try to make sure that they maintain their physical conditioning through that period. And then as we got later into April, we realized that there was going to be no spring sports season, that the spring sports season was going to be canceled. And although that news was disappointing to everybody, I think everybody handled it in as positive a fashion as they can. At that point, we tried to turn our attention to, in particular, to our seniors, realizing that for them, it was going to be a huge loss. We put together a slide presentation where we started off recognizing each one of our spring student athletes with a slide presentation on a daily basis. After we went through the spring athletes, we decided to expand it, and we included the fall and the winter, so that when we were all said and done, we recognized 52 different senior student athletes. The slides were something that people look forward to. The slides were something that people really appreciated. On top of that, we set up with a program that was opened up nationally called Bright Lights, where schools were basically turning on the lights at their athletic fields. So we started doing that on Friday evenings. We expanded that, and we set up to recognize our spring senior student athletes on different occasions down on the field of play, so that they had an opportunity to have photos taken with their senior teammates and also individual photos with their parents. We distributed jerseys so that each one had something to remember their final season of play by. Again, that was something that was very well received by the student athletes and also by the parents in those groups. As we look to the fall, I think I told Beth Hallett this the other day. I've changed the motto in the athletic department to "I don't know." There's too many unknowns at this point. We really don't know where we're going. We've had meetings with
Chris, I don't know if you can hear me, but you've cut out again, unfortunately. Chris, I'm sorry, we missed that last part. and you're on mute at the moment. Chris, can you hear me? Oh, okay.
There you go. Technology is a great thing when it works.
Exactly, yes.
So I'll start over again with the fall season of play, and the basics of it are that I've been fielding a lot of questions, and with a lot of the questions, the only answer I can give people is I don't know. We have tried to take a positive and a realistic approach with everything regarding the fall season. I've been using, after talking with the state and with athletic directors throughout the state, we decided a number of weeks ago that we really weren't going to know anything concrete probably until July 15th. So that is a date that we have kind of used as a barometer to tell people that we're going to hold tight. We're planning, we're preparing. What we've done as an athletic department is we are all set for a regular fall season of play. We have coaches, equipment, uniform, game schedules, everything is in place. But we're being realistic, so we have also worked on a couple of other scenarios that could potentially happen. One would be an abbreviated season of play for our fall sports teams, where potentially we might have a later start date for fall sports. And then the third option there would be that travel would be out of the question, playing other schools would be out of the question. And what we've done there is to work on a intramural-based program that would cover all of the fall sports that we've offered. We have met with our coaches to discuss all this. Everybody is on board. Most of the sports we feel we can do the intramural program with. We're working on and getting a little creative with a football program to see what we can possibly do with that, if that is where we end up having to go. Been working with Matt Hunt a lot because we know there's going to be some changes that are going to have to be made. The major changes that we see coming down the pike are going to be in the realm of hygiene and basic health and cleaning of equipment in any athletic areas. We put together some protocols that we feel are very strong from the standpoint of the way that we can control our athletes and control the spaces that we're using, so that we can provide a safe environment for the safest possible environment for our student athletes, and also to provide our student athletes and our parents with a level of comfort that they will be okay participating in athletics. We have been promoting to our athletes that at this point that the only thing that we want them to do is to concentrate on three things. We want them to get registered, because that's our barometer for being able to put together our rosters and knowing just exactly what we've got for participation levels. I would tell you that right now we already have over 200 student athletes that have registered for fall sports. We expect that number to climb to close to 400 by the time we're all said and done. We're asking them to condition, and when we're asking them to condition, we're asking them to condition the mind as well as the body. We are sending information to them for guidelines to work with and to help them do both of those things. We're working with our coaching staff to work with them as well along those lines. In the end, we're holding hope that things are going to continue to get better, and that we are going to be able to have a good fall season of play. So that is our hope, and that's what we're looking forward to moving forward. And with that, I will open it up to any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Chris. And that was a very thorough report. I would like to see if the committee has any questions. Zona, comments or questions?
I don't have any questions, just comments. I want to always thank Chris for his in-depth details. He keeps us so informed that I feel like I know all the sports myself. I'm also pleased to say that I'm aware and acquainted with the 3 top athletes that he mentioned. And the idea of encouraging them to condition with the videos and condition the mind, Chris, I think it's so important. Thank you for that. It keeps the kids motivated, because I can't imagine with their young minds what's going through their heads with all this COVID-19. So I appreciate you keeping them in your thoughts, as you always do, and giving them some positive direction. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. Just
Thank you so much.
one comment on that, and talking about our student athletes in general, in particular our seniors. I can't say enough good things about our kids and the way they have handled this whole thing. I can tell you honestly that I communicated with a lot of the different athletes over the course of the last couple months. I never got a negative voice or negative word from any of them. They stayed upbeat, they stayed positive, and they were working together to support one another. They have been terrific.
That is wonderful to hear, because I know it has not been easy. Thank you for adding that, Chris. Tim, comments, questions? You do have.
Play.
Go ahead.
Any of our kids that didn't get to play in the spring lose perhaps scholarship opportunities?
No, and we do have a few athletes that are looking forward to going on and playing in college, but nobody was affected in those respects. They've all had opportunities. I mean, most of that was decided prior to this season of play. So no, nobody has lost anything from a standpoint of anything regarding any college offers or anything like that.
Well, I think it will be interesting in the fall. High school football is the best, and I'm not quite sure what'll happen if we don't have it.
I agree with you, and it's just tough when you start talking about social distancing and football in the same sentence. It just doesn't work. But I'm hopeful that the people at the state level and that the medical people we're going to come up with methods where we can get our athletes on the field, whether it's a football player or a golfer. And obviously there's some sports that it's easier to keep kids safe than others, but I really think a lot of this has to do with health and hygiene. And I think as long as everybody is doing the right things and keeping track of themselves, we're going to be okay. That's my hope.
It seems to me that the Vineyard did a lot of social distancing when we played them.
I would say you were correct, Tim. And Donald Herman is probably hoping that this holds and he doesn't have to play us again this fall.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Steve, do you have questions or comments?
Yes, a couple of comments. As usual, Chris, great year, great job. But I particularly wanted to say how much I appreciated your tweeting all of those slides and the information about the teams and the students. Obviously, it was nice to see all of them, but I was particularly edified to see so many of my former students. It was a real treat, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Jen Eller, are you on? Do you have questions or comments?
I'm here. Thank you, Chris. That was a great presentation. I'm sorry I missed a little bit of it, but I got to read the materials prior to the meeting. I wanted to know if you have a sense of how many students have signed up for fall sports at this point.
So right now we have over 200 that have signed up. It's approximately 190 at the high school level. And I believe we've got 32 at the middle school level. And just to give you a barometer, that is probably 60% higher than what we had at this point last year.
Wow, that's fantastic.
From the kids and parents that I talk to, they're positive, they're eager, and they're anxious to get back out and get active.
And are you comparing the names of the kids that have signed up to, the teams from last year, last fall, to kind of check in with families who haven't reached out yet or signed up?
So the way we run our registration process each year is we start by taking all the athletes that were on the roster for the previous year. Mm-hmm. We put them back on the roster. We take anybody that played at the middle school level that's moving into high school and put them on those rosters. And we use that as a complete roster. Then we have a column where we mark off as they register. So everybody that is on those sheets right now are people that played, last year, and, the registrations are trickling in. Typically what happens with athletic registrations is most of the time people will wait and delay and
yeah. Lost it, Chris.
We lost him again.
That might be a sign.
Yeah, right.
Maybe so.
Jen.
Are you back? Oh, you're back there, Chris. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I just have one question, Chris. As you are signing
my
up,
internet connection.
Please, can you please mute if you're not? Thank you. I don't know who that was. Chris, are you taking fees as students are signing up for the fall, or are you going to wait to collect fees until you know if the program's going to work?
Okay, so first I'm going to answer that question by saying that with regards to spring sports, everybody that had paid a fee they were reimbursed. We made that happen right away once we found out that the season was canceled. We have suggested to people that they hold off on paying the fees. Some have still gone ahead and done it. But we do have the means and the mechanism to refund those if we need to. Going into a new school year, we also have the advantage where we can roll those fees forward to the next season of play if we need to. So that is something we're aware of and something that we're keeping an eye on.
Terrific. Thank you. Well, thank you again for all of your work, and congratulations on an outstanding year. Unfortunately, to end it the way that we did is truly unfortunate, especially for our seniors. But we're so proud of our athletic department and all of the successes our athletes have. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I did confirm with Dr. Hallett that there were no public comments except for a shout out from Bobby Planzer. So I will give a shout out to Bobby Planzer and say hello, and thank you for watching. Moving on, I'd like to ask Jen Erickson, who is our Director of Technology, to please give her presentation. Hi, Jen.
Hello. Let me get this started. And of course, right this moment, the ice cream truck is going by, so you're going to hear that. And present. Thanks for your patience. Jen Erickson, Director of Technology. I want to give a special shout out to Linda Ferrantella, who retired last fall. I wasn't really sure how well we were going to do when she retired. It was kind of crazy without her, but her knowledge and experience was amazing, and she has become a resource for us. We have some new members of the team, and as you can see, I put in green that half of my team is now 2 years or less with the school. Joanne Johnson's database administrator, Jamie McCoy, Jason Campisi, Marina Bencheva started, and she's primarily working at the elementary school, and Jaime Saravia is at primarily working at the intermediate school. Some of the accomplishments that we've gotten done this year. We finished our G Suite Gmail calendar migration. So we are a Google Shop transferring from Microsoft. We did move our voicemail so it shows up in email for all of the staff. We've implemented the GoGuardian teacher. We got Remind, which is an app for communicating with the students for all schools. We got rid of the Verizon phone service and went to Comcast. The outages with Verizon would sometimes be 24 hours at a time. We have had 2 minor glitches with Comcast that lasted less than 10 minutes. We got the paper cut system, which is our printing system. It allows the teachers to send their print job into a mass queue, and then they can walk up to any printer and print. We've performed our E-rate upgrades, which upgraded a lot of the access points and network equipment for wireless. Big data, I'm going to show you a slide in a second. It's really cool. We've done a lot of recycling. We did have a yard sale of the old Samsung computers that were no longer in use. And we've initiated the school has a lot of the employees are on the cybersecurity awareness training that is sponsored by the town. So this is the big data, and Joanne Johnson's been instrumental in getting this information loaded. And we just grabbed one of the screens. This happens to be the EL population. And as you can see from the top of the screen, you can, once this information is loaded, you can drill down by school, by enrollment status, by reason, and the month, the month and the year. So the information, to have that visual of it is really cool. Some of the accomplishments by school. At NES, Marina Bencheva went solo in November after Linda Ferrantella retired. We were able to implement the management of our iPads with the centralized management tool. We got a lot more document cameras for the teachers. We've completed classroom inventory. And then when COVID happened, we were able to Chromebooks to all the families that needed them. We've also been able to assist with Padlet support. It's one of the tools that the teachers use for the NES students. At NIS, we went one-to-one with all classrooms at NIS. Jaime Saravia, he started in January and he went solo in March, literally weeks before COVID hit. Once COVID hit, we were able to roll out the Chromebooks, which used to sit in all the classrooms, to any of the families that needed them. And he has been unbelievably helpful in assisting with the bilingual support of the Hispanic families. At CPS, grade 6 got their new Chromebooks. We upgraded many of the smart panels. We've implemented or expanded the GoGuardian, Clever Sync. A lot of these are tech tools. Jamie McCoy has become our Nantucket trainer, which is actually pretty much a high school program at this point. But he has students come in and we work on Chromebooks and fix them. We've completed Windows updates to version 10. We've done a lot of recycling, and once COVID-19 happened, we were able to do the remote support, and using Google Meet, they were also doing the support. At the high school, we had the grade 9 Chromebooks. Grade 9 got new Chromebooks. We implemented the Google Classroom for all staff. We had 5 Nantuckies throughout the year. Nantuckies are our student support. They come in for about an hour during their advisory and learn how to fix computers. And they've been great. We've actually hired 3 of them to work as summer interns. We upgraded ClearTouch panels. We upgraded the auditorium projector. So now you can actually read everything on the screen. We began the upgrade of our PA system. That's going to take a while. It's a hardwired system. But we started. Once COVID-19 hit, we were able to use Google Remote Desktop and Google Voice and be able to provide remote support at the high school level. At the community school, we were assisted with a lot of their upgrades, both hardware and software. We upgraded their uninterrupted power supply. We were assisting in remote learning, and we've set up their new testing center, or we assisted setting up their testing center. Infrastructure upgrades. We upgraded many of the servers and domain controllers. Many of our older servers went into their more of a virtual environment. A virtual server can be spun up in about 20 minutes, where to build a new server itself can take weeks. At 56 Center Street, we put a domain controller so they have their own offsite backup. We upgraded the wireless system with E-rate funding, which is an ongoing project. And we are planning Azure Active Directory, which will allow more of the Windows stuff that we do within the school. We'll be able to do it outside of the school, which will really help if in fact we're not back at school in the fall. In the classrooms, we assisted with the computer-based testing and map testing, access testing. We've upgraded many of the interactive panels and a few TVs where that was appropriate. We replaced some of the projectors and screens with large TVs and/or smart panels. And I apologize, the ice cream truck's going by. Some of the infrastructure purchased, I followed in Karen McGonigal's footsteps in the way that we identify what was purchased. And most of the numbers are very consistent with previous years. What I did do is we started a real phasing out an inventory management where we phase out the older devices. So if you look at this screen compared to previous ones, the 2 fiscal year 16, we've phased out many of those devices. Again, infrastructure, you will see that the laptops, we were able to, in the last couple of months, get kind of an infusion of money, which went to laptops that we're purchasing for the teachers, and we will be able to get those to the teachers by the fall. Some of the teachers were using 6- and 7-year-old laptops. For professional development, we've been working with Google and G Suite, expanding that. We've done the use of the various systems that we have. We've done professional development. We've expanded our training of Aspen whenever needed. We've expanded with Remind, which is an amazing tool. And we have tech tips that are ongoing. Administrative functions within Aspen, we have pretty much finalized all of the families using the Family Connection, so that the registration information and any updates that need to be done before the beginning of each school year are done in the Family Connection as part of Aspen. We've done a lot of report customizations, and ongoing assessment of data. Big data is an interesting project. And then the testing that goes on. Looking ahead to the next school year is how do we continue with COVID-19 to provide equity and devices and enable learning for all of the students. We've actually gotten some devices that provide a cellular signal within a house so that you can connect laptops to it for those of our students that don't have internet connectivity at home. We will continue the one-to-one program. In the fall, we will have a Chromebook for every child from first grade through 11th, and then all the 12th graders who need them. We've been really tight on our inventory life cycle. We've implemented a new ticketing system called Get Help. And our E-rate, our internet access was going from 300 megabits to a gigabit in July, along with network upgrades. And any questions?
Thank you, Jen. That's a lot of information.
And geek, no less.
That's okay. Jen, I'm going to start with you to see if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Jen. And I can't thank you and your staff enough for everything you have done during these challenging times. I mean, without you, we would not be able to continue educating our students like we have. And what you and your team have done is absolutely remarkable. So I can't thank you enough. I know I've been in contact with you a couple of times over the course, and I can tell that you have been extremely busy. And it has been a challenging situation that I feel like you and your team have overcome successfully. And I am so grateful to you and your team. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Jen. Zona?
Same here, Jen. Thank you so much. Thanking you for making sure all of our students that didn't have Chromebooks had them. I think that was real important, and thankfully we were on the Chromebook path. So thank you.
Thanks, Zona. Tim?
Jen, I'm wondering how you think next year will be if we do not have in-school, we don't have brick and mortar school.
We've allowed many of the families to keep their devices over the summer, and we'll continue to do that. I want to really work with the staff and the principals to figure out the best way going forward. One of the things that we can do is have all of the students consistently use Chromebooks because we're able to monitor them, and it makes it more consistent for the teachers. We're preparing for that. We've got iPads for the kindergartners. We're just about set up with that to go in the fall for every single student. And we have a Chromebook for every student from first grade through 12th. So we just have to organize how we're going to pick them up, because we can't have hundreds of people in the library picking them up as we did the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Steve?
Yeah, great job, Jen, under truly horrifying circumstances. I hope, but as Tim talked brick and mortar, I thought, I'm too much of a pessimist. You people are going to be on the line at least for a significant portion of the coming year. I did have one question, and that is, is your staff sufficient to handle all the extra work?
Well,
sorry, it is a loaded question, I know.
It is a loaded question. I have an amazing team right now. I mean, just we work so well together, And I'm actually encouraging a little bit more cross training and cross coverage so that people are, the staff can more easily cover for another school. The hardware and software that the elementary school uses is substantially different than what the high school uses. So to do that kind of cross training can be difficult, but I think it's essential. And then it's just using people's skills. Jaime has been absolutely wonderful in communicating with the Hispanic community. So we haven't needed to get translators. Marina is Bulgarian, so she can cover those bases, and she has a young child. So her patience is, absolutely wonderful. So we're doing okay. We're doing pretty well. Having the number of devices compared to many of my counterparts in other schools has been absolutely invaluable. I think the equity issue is always the thing that I'm trying to find a balance with. And what may end up happening is similar to the way the middle school has been running. Every child may need to use one of our school issued devices, because then, it's consistent, and there's some monitoring going on for the children's safety. But we'll see how it goes. We want to be flexible. We want to make sure that all the kids can get access without having to sit outside the building or something.
Yeah, my question was particularly concerning because of the additional support you've got to offer to parents and families. I mean, I'm sure the parents, there are a lot of parents that need a lot of help in able to work with their kids on this stuff. So I hope you folks can keep it up. It's admirable.
We keep working.
Thank you, Steve. Jen, I have just a couple of comments. I love the Nantuckies. I love that. And I think it's brilliant, because not only are you giving and teaching skills for the students, but then to hear that you've hired them for the summer is just terrific, because anybody that's got a computer, which is almost everybody, they must know how difficult it is in the outside of school system to get technical support. So that is a skill and a job that will be greatly needed. So that's terrific. Thank you for doing that. We know that there are households that have multiple children in them. And have we heard about certain households or families having problems with their bandwidth or being able to access the internet to get their schoolwork done? And if so, are we in a position to be able to help them in any way?
Yes, I get requests all the time. Right now, I had ordered 18 MiFi devices. They are basically a cell phone and with kind of a built-in router, so that you plug one in the house near a window, and it provides a cellular signal, and then the computers can attach to it. They'll see it show up in the under the Wi-Fi. So I've had requests. We're up to 18. I'm committed to providing those to every family. They're not as fast as Comcast by any means, but they are access. Certainly in many other schools around the Commonwealth, you get a lot of people sitting in cars outside the school system or near a Wi-Fi hotspot. And, but I really wanted to make sure, especially for the younger kids, that they have the ability to access from home. They're not very fast, so it is just like connecting on your cell phone, but it's something. And we will continue to order those if we need them. Other than that, we are willing to work with people and find the nearest Wi-Fi hotspot, if that's an option.
So just may I ask, sort of with my parent hat on, I understand the connection through the cell phone, but is the cell phone activated? I mean, if it is it possible that it goes into a household that doesn't have cell phones and students have access now to using a cell phone, or is that blocked?
It is its own cellular device. So if you put it near a window, on most of Nantucket, you're very likely to get a cellular signal. There happen to be Sprint devices just because they had a great offer for education. And from what I understand, they're working pretty well. Then that looks like a router in your house that you'd have many devices connect to, but it is actually a cellular connection. So you don't want to connect more than 1 or 2 computers to it. They would really slow it down, but it's something. And it allows, especially the younger ones, to be involved. So.
Okay, but you can't access, they couldn't access from that device the internet or anything like that without the parents knowing, I guess was my thought.
So that kind of gets back to, we want to have the students use a Chromebook, because even when the Chromebooks are outside of the school, they are still monitored through our systems. Having children using their own personal device or a family device, we're not doing that kind of monitoring. So yes, when we provide these devices to families that have no internet access at all, it does, they're bypassing our security systems except for the Chromebook. So if a child has a Chromebook that's school issued and it's accessing the internet, they are receiving some level of protection. So
Right.
we may, the recommendation may be that we recommend that all children from 8th grade, from 1st grade to 8th grade, use a school issued Chromebook, because we're monitoring those devices for safety.
Right. And perhaps a notice could go out to the parents, just letting them know with that other device in the house that there is a possibility that they could connect to the internet without that, because I think not every parent would think about that. So I think that would be helpful to pass
Yep.
that on.
Certainly. I'm happy to do that. It was kind of an oversight. We were just so rushed in getting the kids.
Of course, yeah.
online. So.
Yeah, no, it's my thought as you were saying that. So that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jen. Really appreciate your update. And thank you for all the hard work that you and your team are doing.
You're quite welcome.
Continue. Thanks. Okay, I would like to ask Michelle Boba to come up as Director of Special Education for her report, please.
Okay, hi. I want to echo what everyone was saying about Jen and the technology department. So this report would not be possible without them, and of course all our remote learning for our students as well. And I think, Jen, you're going to put up the PowerPoint, right? So she's still helping me. Okay. So I'm going to just do an overview. I'm going to start with how we do special education through remote learning. I'm going to talk about the different types of plans available for students with and without disabilities. I'm going to go over some statistics related to the numbers of the, there you go, related to number of students on IEPs and 504 plans. And then I'm going to go over some descriptive statistics that are based on disability categories and looking at the various schools in terms of our enrollment. And then I'm just going to do a quick update on what the data collection requirements are for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So I do want to give a huge shout out to our family partners because remote learning is not possible without them. And I think that we've all have like newfound respect for each other as parents are in the seat as a teacher, and the teachers are so also respecting and valuing the parents' work, because parents are working and juggling their responsibilities and still trying to, help teach their students. So I thought this was a cute slide to start out with, because it's one of our students, and they're measuring out 6 feet. What you don't see is there's a family member underneath that's 6 feet long. So they're kind of measuring how big is 6 feet. And it just shows, you know, just the family and working together. So doing special education through remote learning, of course, has challenges. Some of the obstacles and quandaries that we have attempted to deal with are
I think we have lost Michelle. Yeah, I see you, Zona. I can't hear her either. Michelle, if you can hear me, we cannot hear you. And in fact, the screen has gone completely dark. So did she just get kicked off, Jen?
Yeah, I got kicked off. All right, I'm back.
Okay, you're back.
All right. So we need to conduct our evaluations within 30 days of receiving consent from parents, yet we can't do those evaluations because we can't work with kids face to face. So that's a challenge. How to balance screen time with healthy activities, especially for younger children. We're telling them, you know, get off the computer, get off the TV, and we don't want them glued to the screen. The other thing is that the IEP meetings don't stop. We still need to conduct our IEP meetings once a year for our annual review meetings. They all need to be conducted virtually. So we did develop expectations and guidelines and protocols from the very beginning, because again, special education doesn't stop just because the buildings are closed. So it's conducting business as usual, but in a new normal. And then I have a little wordle there that has a lot of the things like, how many times do we hear the new normal or unprecedented times or synchronous and asynchronous? So just like general ed, we're all dealing with the same kind of issues. This is a slide that one of our social workers shared with me. And so it's sort of, I liked it because she's showing how she's kind of doing low tech through high tech. So it's a game that she made up. And she has on the top different activities and things, and on the bottom, the different feeling states. And they're using Michelle Garcia Winner's zones of regulation. And the car gets parked in the red zone if there's issues, or in the green zone if they're doing well. Here is an example of a student that was doing this through, I believe, Padlet. And I thought it was really cool because it was actually an art project. So it was general education, but it's really like incorporating life skills through art. And the student had sort of an exemplar and had to put together ingredients and make it very artsy. And then he got to eat his art project. Here are slides of students in kindergarten that the special ed kindergarten teacher shared with me. We're using a lot of Instagram. And so the teacher can post activities and videos on Instagram, and then the students share what they're doing too. So it's that reciprocal dialogue and sharing of pictures in their work. Okay, so those are my cute pictures for now. Next, back to business. So just a general sense or explanation of what kind of plans we have for students with suspected disabilities. So the first thing is students, whether they have a disability or not, they can be placed on what we call an ICAP. It's an individual curriculum accommodation plan. Excuse me. That plan is drawn from our DCAP, our district curriculum accommodation plan, which I created a few years ago in response to our coordinated program review. I believe you have it in your packet. I'm not going to go over it. It looks like this, but it's about 7 pages. And you will see all the different resources and interventions that we can do for students that are struggling. So we do not need to, identify a disability or, have them evaluated. There's a lot of things that teachers can do and do to address struggling with academics or social emotional issues. So the first plan is the ICAP. The second kind of a plan is, we used to call it RTI, response to intervention. The new lingo is MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports. And the difference between that plan and the ICAP is this plan really incorporates specific targeted interventions. It's not just a list of resources or accommodations. It's specific activities based on the area that needs remediation. And so our schools have these teams. They meet to discuss students that are struggling. They put together a plan. They try different interventions, and then they meet again. So they're monitoring the progress. And then some of those students may eventually be referred for special education, but some of the students do well, and that's all they need. So if a student is identified as having a disability, that student may be eligible for a 504 plan or for an IEP, an individual education program plan. Okay. So before I get into the IEP and the 504, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the core beliefs of special education. The first is that all students, all special ed students, have the right to a free, appropriate, and public education. We cannot ask parents to pay for anything related to special education, including evaluations or services. Parents or students ages 18 and over must provide consent for any standardized evals, any kind of services within special education, or any type of placement. School districts must have a continuum of services. So we start with the accommodations. We might have consultation with specialists, related services, which includes therapists, it includes specialized transportation, and then specialized instruction, which is typically done by the special ed teacher. Not only do they have those range of services, but we also have to have a range of placements. So students have the right to attend the least restrictive environment where they can make progress. That default is always the general ed classroom. Sometimes people think that we have to rationalize and justify why a student must be in inclusion, but it's actually the opposite. On our IEPs, we must justify the reason that the student could not make progress within inclusion without support. And the placements that we offer can again range from full inclusion to and support within the classroom, to a pullout group, to all day specialized instruction outside of the gen ed setting, to a day school, or to a residential school. So again, there's that continuum. And I already talked about the pullout services. Okay, so on to special education and 504 statistics. The IEP plans right now, we have 266. Well, what I say now, I pulled this data from end of March to basically mid-May. We had 266 students on IEPs across the 4 schools. Plus we have 6 students that are attending residential schools. And we had 1 student who graduated from the residential school earlier. We also have 10 students that are placed in private schools, such as the Lighthouse School or the Nantucket New School. So students with disabilities who are placed by their parents in those private schools when they are Nantucket residents are also eligible for special education. So we actually have been evaluating a fair amount of the students, and we have 10 students who are eligible. Of those 10, 7 are receiving services. So basically we have 282 students within the island of Nantucket on IEPs, and that represents about 16.8% of students district-wide. That compared to 504 plans, which I thought I had a slide in there. I don't know if it's on the next one, but nope, okay, go back. A 504, the difference between an IEP and a 504 plan is the students on an IEP must need that specialized instruction or those related services that I talked about, whereas a student under a 504 plan just needs accommodations. So a lot of districts, students that just need accommodations might be extended time for testing, redirection. A lot of times students with ADHD or a health complication might be on a 504 plan. So their disabilities do not impact them as much that they would need that special instruction. So we have 109 students on 504 plans across our 4 schools, and that represents about 6.5% of the student body. So when you look at all the students with disabilities, because again, on a 504 plan, you must be identified as having a disability. Basically, we have 23% of students in our district are identified as having a disability. So this is just gives you the number of students on 504 plans. You can see that it goes up across the schools as into the upper grades, which is perfectly appropriate because some of these students might have been on an IEP, and then with that specialized instruction, we're able to transition from that specialized instruction to just needing accommodations. So those are good statistics to have. You can see in preschool, we don't have any students on a 504. They're either on an IEP or they're a peer. Here's just the number of out-of-district placements. You can see that it's been relatively stable, for 10 years, down a little bit, but we do have 1 or 2 kids that are slotted to go to residential. So that number, between 6 and 8. In terms of comparing to the state, we do have a slightly lower percentage of students on IEPs compared to the state. The state is about 18.4%, and we're about 16.7, 16.8%. And again, you can see that's been a little bit stable. Our number has jumped up from 2015, but it's been stable since 2019. Okay, percentages of students on IEPs per school. So preschool, the 46% are on IEPs, but that's nothing to be alarmed about because our integrated preschool program is really like a special education program where we have our peers that our students on IEPs can learn from, but we recruit a lot of peers to be their partners, but it really is to support those students on IEPs so that they can learn with other students. And it's, as you know, it's a great program. It's been, here for a long time in Nantucket. So it has a really good reputation and they do a wonderful job teaching those kids. In kindergarten, this past year, we've had 20 students that started kindergarten on IEPs. So last year we had a lot of students in preschool on IEPs. And then this year we're finding now they're moving into kindergarten. But if you look at the population K to 2, it represents about 14.5% of students on IEPs at the elementary school and about 12.8% at NIS, 16% at CPS, and about 15% at the high school. So these are numbers of students, not percentages. So we have 27 students in preschool, and that's slightly less than half of the total population in preschool. And then you can see the numbers at NES went up quite a fair amount compared to last year. Again, nothing to be concerned about. I think we're identifying those students with disabilities. We have seen, a rise in some of the students that have come to the school. And IS has been stable since I've been here every year. It's about 45 students. And then what is a little unusual is 80 at the high school, because usually those numbers start to decrease. One of the reasons might be that as we're moving into programming for students after their 12th grade, we're gonna keep those kids with us. But that is a number that I'd like to see a little bit lower. And that's just a comparison. So you can see that last year we had 41 students on preschool on IEPs and 27 at elementary. The rest of the numbers aren't too different. And that's again the year before. So. Okay, so I did mention about preschool, how we had a big jump last year. We had 41 students in preschool identified as having an IEP compared to 27 this year. So maybe last year was a little bit of a blip, because you can see that the 27 numbers is much closer to the previous years since about 2016, because as of 2017, it started really increasing. I always like to look at not just the numbers, but what are the disabilities that our students are identified with. So what I did was, for the elementary school, I combined the preschool and the K-2. And you can see that of the students on IEPs at the elementary school, 18% of them have autism. So it's not 18% of the whole school, but 18% of our students on IEPs are diagnosed with autism. And communication is another big category. Developmental delay, which is very common and pre-K to 2, is also a big category. So a developmental delay means that the student has, in one or more areas, a delay in either their motor skills, their communication skills, their social emotional skills, and it doesn't necessarily mean a disability. By the time that they're 9 years old, we need to evaluate them and make sure that we locate another disability, or they need to go off an IEP. But the state of Massachusetts recognizes developmental delay, and it could just be that. It could just be a delay, it could be a sign of a more chronic disability. But either way, we provide that early intervention for those kids to help them make progress. And then, you can see where some of the really interesting from school to school, how the health disability at the elementary school is 5%, whereas at the other schools, especially the intermediate and the middle school, it's almost, around 26%, 21%. What you need to know is that any students diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit disorder with or without hyperactivity, is coded under health. So they're not, for the most part, they're not medical issues. There might be a few, but most of those students with health are actually have ADHD. The other one that kind of increases is specific learning disability, because when students are, still in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, they're still learning to read, and it can be very difficult to identify if they have a specific learning disability, such as dyslexia, because reading is a developmental skill. Some kids crack the code early, some kids crack the code late. Doesn't necessarily mean they have a disability, but by the time they get to third or fourth grade, then we're really seeing that gap, and then we can make those determinations. So most districts will have a fairly high percentage of specific learning disability, which you can see is across the board from the intermediate school and up. Emotional disabilities, again, those are often identified when they, beyond grade 2. You can see that there. And then the only other thing I want to mention is the other. So the other includes those students that are placed in the private schools that I told you about by their parents, or placed by us in private schools, such as the residential schools, or if they're homeschooled, they can also be eligible for special ed and consider under that other. So that's a fairly small number there, but you can see where the disabilities end up. Not surprisingly, autism and emotional are concerning there. So this is kind of just a similar description, but it's just a picture. As you can see at the elementary school, most of the students have a developmental delay followed by communication and then autism. And for students at the intermediate school, of the 45 students, most of them have the specific learning disability followed by health. CPS, again, specific learning disability followed by health. And the high school, specific learning disability, health and intellectual is moving up there. But again, with those students at the upper levels, those are the students that are going to stay with us past 12th grade. So I feel like, again, here's some more slides from Instagram, and it just shows like our topsy-turvy world during COVID-19. So we have kids working and doing academics outside, And then we also have kids doing their exercise inside. Just want to mention and shout out to our school psychologists because they are very, very busy. As I said, it's really challenging to do the evaluations because you can't modify standardized tests, and they're not really able to do it online because you have to be right there with them and you can't photocopy the materials, et cetera, et cetera. So as of a few weeks ago, we had completed 45 initial evaluations, but we still had 43 pending. And we're going to try to chip away at that this summer. If we can work with any students face-to-face, we will and then we will be really jammed in the fall for these evaluations. You can see that on average, we do anywhere from 95 to 104 over the last 3 years. I do want to make a note, these are just the initials. So any student on an IEP also needs to be reevaluated every 3 years. So in addition to those, we have students that are probably another 100 students evaluated through a reevaluation. So typically we might do about 200 evaluations a year. So this slide just again, I had mentioned about some of the data collection that we need to do for DESE for special education. So one of the things that they have us to keep track of are our timelines for those initial evaluations. As I mentioned previously, we have 30 days to get the evaluation done, and then we have 45 working days to meet and have the IEP. We didn't have that requirement this year, but we typically have those reports that are due every 3 years. For the past 3 years, I've had to do the early childhood outcome summaries. That's indicator 7, and those are where the preschool teachers and therapists are rating children's development in 3 areas, including getting their needs met, cognition, communication, and that's one category, cognition/communication, and social emotional. The other data report I keep track of is early intervention. So when we have students that are referred from the early intervention, we need to make sure that we have a meeting with those students, that we've evaluated them, and that we have an IEP ready for them to go upon their 3rd birthday so that there's no delay. So typically early intervention ends at age 3. And then if the student does have a disability, then the public school picks those students up. I was on a IEP meeting today for a student who will be 3 in September. So we got that eval done and we had our meeting and we're good to go. So we're working on that. The other indicator that we have to keep track of is transition planning. And that is to make sure that all students who are 14 and older have a transition plan rewritten with them as part of the team every year. And we're looking at how are we preparing the student for life after high school. So we're looking at community experiences and life skills and what are the IEP goals that need to help support the student's vision and the team's vision of where the student wants to be. So if they're going to be going to college or working, are they going to live independently, all those kind of things. So the state asks us to keep track of that. The other thing that I do every year is physical restraints. There's a security portal that I have to input all the physical restraints that we are doing in the schools. And then age span and class size. We need to make sure that we don't have students that are over 4 years apart being taught in the same group. And likewise, there are class size requirements for any kind of preschool class or special education class. And then finally, a relatively new one is called significant disproportionality. So that is where we are looking at certain areas, looking at students of different ethnicities and looking to see have they been suspended more than the average child of a majority? Are they in a different kind of a placement, or are they identified more frequently with a certain type of disability? So across the state, we have not been found to be out of proportion of significant disproportionality. However, we are at risk in a few areas, and that one of them being intellectual impairment being overly identified for students who are Black. That is a across the state issue. Like I said, we're not there, but we are at risk of that. So it's just helping educate and keep people aware of how we need to make sure that we are not over identifying one student or another. The suspensions was not a problem at all for our kids. So that's just a snippet of some of the things that we're doing in the special ed office. I do want to say congratulations to the seniors. Very proud of all their accomplishments and all our students that graduated. And also thank you all for your support. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Michelle. And again, another wonderful and extensive report. Jen, I'll go to you first to see if you have questions or comments. You're muted, Jen.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. I'm wondering if you've had families reaching out to you more than ever during these times, because I can only imagine how stressful it must be on these families to have their children home and to be responsible for every aspect of their learning and their, their care, their treatment, and their plan. So have you had families reaching out to you, and have you been able to provide, additional supports to families during these times?
So I do have to say the families have been so patient and absolutely wonderful during these times. I think now that we're ending the year is kind of getting to everybody. And I think they're more concerned about the summer. We've done whatever we can. If there was a concern about not enough services, we've tried to put in more. If there was a concern of there's too many things to do, we worked with the team to kind of modify and prioritize what does the student need to do. So some of the families have been all over the map in terms of I want more, I want less. The hardest thing has been not being able to do anything face to face, because even our staff have wanted to go and see the kids, something with them, because this Zoom, as great as our technology is, it's just not, there's just no comparison. So there was one family who had reached out via another agency, and I just tried to advertise for a babysitter for that family, just something for to help with the student. But like I said, the parents have been really, really good. We've had some good success, even where you would be surprised that you wouldn't think we would have success. So one of our speech and language therapists was talking about how a lot of the kids are making really good progress through remote teletherapy. And a lot of it really does depend on that family support. So again, I can't thank them enough for their patience.
Thank you, Michelle.
Wish we could do more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Zona? Zona, are you on? Did you get kicked off?
All right, I'm muted and
are.
unmuted and remuted.
Okay.
Jen asked the same question that I was going to ask Michelle, and because you would think that maybe your staff would be inundated with parents needing help. So it's a tough time. It's just hard to say. When you can't go, you can't go. And technology is only as good, because this is tough. Sitting even in a Zoom meeting, my Achilles is really bothering. So I'm going to get up and exercise. So ignore me when you see me jumping up and down. Okay. That's all I had.
Thank you, Zona. Tim.
Michelle, I have a question. What is the import of the RTI? Does it have sort of the strength of an IEP or 504?
No, I mean, it's a plan that the teachers develop that they're working on. There's no legal teeth to it. However, it might lead to an IEP or possibly a 504. What we have found with some of our students who English is not their first language is that when we do testing, especially, you know, early, like kindergarten, first, second grade, they're still learning, you know, they're still learning Spanish, they're still learning English, for example. And if we did testing, it doesn't always indicate that gap in their learning that would indicate a disability. But if we did these interventions and then kept monitoring their progress, then if you don't see their progress going up, you know, a good slope, I don't know what way I'm facing here, but you know, you want it to go higher. If it flatlines, then you're like, oh, that is a disability. So the state allows us to do that specific learning disability identification through either all that testing, which the younger grades, it often doesn't come out that way, or through this RTI. So it's only for specific learning disabilities. You can't really determine autism or anything else. But you know, I got a grant and we've been working on some training, and the principals have, you know, put together some infrastructure, and they have their teams and their times. And so it's always a work in progress, but it's really, really critical because it's going to catch those kids so they don't need an IEP. And then for those that do, it's also going to catch them. So it's really, it's not supposed to be special education. It's really gen education, but it's really important to special education to do this work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Steve.
Great detail. Thank you. And thank you for your expertise.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Michelle, just a quick question. When you had the pre-K slide up there on the disabilities, and I know you said the other was in private settings, did you include in that for NES or pre-K rather, private preschools? Are we still going out and providing the outreach to private preschools?
We're not really providing outreach to private schools. They may have referred students to us. But we, I wanted to work on this year more consulting with Head Start because it's in the building and it's just that much easier. But this does not include the private preschools. They are also eligible under what we call proportionate share. And as part of proportionate share, I have to reserve the federal grant that we get for students with disabilities, and whatever percentage of students that are in the private schools on an IEP, we have to spend that much money on them. But we haven't had any preschool students. If they have been identified, they typically come to our program. What we have done with that money is we have basically funded a bus so that the students can come to the school and get their reading instruction in the morning, and then the bus brings them back to their school. So it's funded the reading instruction, the teachers, a little bit of their salaries, it's funded the bus and a speech therapist. But we haven't had any yet. Every year it's possible that we could.
Great. Thank you very much, Michelle. And thank you again for all of your hard work and a detailed report, thorough and detailed report. So thank you. Sorry, I don't think I was muted. Moving on to committee discussions and votes to be taken. I'm just going to pull this up on my computer if I may. Okay. May I have a motion to vote and approve the Miriam Condon Altshult and Evelyn McLaughlin Scholarship, please?
So moved.
That's Tim. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And so Jen, Eller, may I have your vote?
Yes, aye.
Zona Butler,
Aye.
Tim Lepre,
Aye.
Steve Sodovic,
Aye.
Pauline Proch, aye. Thank you. Moving on to vote to approve the MOU with the town of Nantucket with Nantucket Community School. May I have a
Butler,
motion?
so moved.
Okay. May I have a second?
Eller, second.
Eller, second. Thank you. Tim, may I have your vote, please?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Zona Butler?
Aye.
Jen Eller?
Aye.
Pauline Proch, aye. Thank you. A vote to approve the donation from the Community Foundation for Nantucket to Nantucket.
Butler, so moved.
Thank you. It is for a donation of $5,000 for the enrichment kids for island youth. May I have a second?
Lepre, second.
Thank you. Steve, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Zona?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Thank you. Pauline, aye. A vote to approve the donation for Nantucket Dolphins Booster Club to the community school swimming travel program for $2,982. May I have a motion?
Move approval. Lepre.
Thank you, Tim.
Second.
Butler.
Thank you. Steve, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Zona?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Pauline Proch, aye. Thank you. Vote to approve donation grant from the Nantucket Fund for Emergency Relief to Nantucket Community School for the purchase of health-related materials and supplies in preparation for summer camp for $5,500. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve.
Second,
Lepre.
Zona Butler.
Zona, second. Jen, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Zona?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And I for Pauline Proch. A vote to approve the donation from Remain Nantucket to Nantucket Community School for Tenant Support Program, 56 Center Street for $12,500. May I have a motion?
So moved, Zona Butler.
Thank you, Zona.
Second.
Second, Steve. Jen, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Thank you, Zona.
Yeah, aye.
Thank you, Tim.
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Pauline Proch, aye. Vote to approve the donation grant for the Nantucket Fund for Emergency Relief to Nantucket Community School. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Did I do that already? Yes, I'm looking, yes. A vote to approve the donation from Cape and Islands Workforce Board to Nantucket High School Innovation Pathways. $500. May I have a motion, please?
Zona Butler, so moved.
Thank you. A second?
Jen Eller, second.
Okay, Jen, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Zona?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Pauline, aye. Thank you. A vote to approve the donation for Adopt a Lunch Tray Program from Kristen Friedman for $100. May I have a motion?
So moved, Zona Butler.
Thank you.
Sec-
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Jen, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Zona?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Pauline, aye. A vote to approve donation from Nantucket Let's Get Sewing for 250 face masks to Nantucket Public Schools. May I have a motion?
So moved, Zona Butler.
Thank you. Second?
Lepre, yes.
Eller, second.
Thank you. Jen, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Zona?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Pauline is aye. We have at this point a new appointment for school committee clerk. May I have a vote, please, to appoint the school committee clerk? May I have a motion?
I
You have
will
to say
move
who it
if you
is.
identify the party involved.
School committee clerk is Steve Sodovic.
Secretary.
Yeah.
Zona Butler, so moved. Yeah, it's for Steve.
Madam Chair?
I don't.
Yes,
think
I'm not
that's
correct,
right.
right? It's Logan O'Connor, correct, Mike?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, sorry. That's what I thought as I said it.
Steve is the secretary of the school committee, but the nomination should be Logan O'Connor.
Thank you.
Unless Steve wants to take that too.
No, that's quite all right. I move to approve Logan O'Connor as secretary. I mean, as clerk
School
of
committee
the
clerk.
school
God.
committee.
I
Second
have a
by
second.
Zona Butler, second.
Thank you. Jen, may I have your vote? Zona,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Pauline, aye. Thank you. May I have a motion to accept the minutes from the May 5th, 2020 school committee meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve.
Second, Zona Butler.
Thank you. Jen, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Zona,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Pauline, aye. And may I have a vote for the transfers and invoices?
So move,
Move
Zona
to
Butler.
approve transfers and invoices.
Thank you. So I have a motion, I have a second. May I have your vote, Jen?
Aye.
Thank you. Zona,
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And Steve.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Michael Kozor.
Superintendent Michael Kozort, on your copy of the agenda, I think was from the original meeting that was postponed. We had added to that agenda, agenda item J that may not be showing on your copy, a vote to approve the contract between the Nantucket School Committee and the Nantucket Teachers Association, July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2023.
Thank you. And so may I have a motion, please, to approve the said contract, the teacher's contract?
Zona Butler, I'd like to, I'd like to make a motion to approve that.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Eller, second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to ask Jen Eller for her vote.
Aye.
Zona Butler for her vote.
Aye.
Steve Sodovic for his vote.
Aye.
Thank you. And I'd like it represented that Tim Lepre and Pauline Proch are both recusing from this vote. Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for adding that in. Let's go to our superintendent's report, please.
So the first thing that I would like to report on is would be the graduation ceremony this year. I would like to give credit to Dr. John Bucky and Assistant Principal Jen Saradelis, who worked with the students and senior class advisor Chris Cothran and their parents to pull off a virtual graduation this year. Certainly want to thank NCTV, Andrew Cromartie, and a host of others behind the scenes that edited and pulled this together, and an amazing conclusion on Saturday after the showing of the graduation. The car parade through the community was something special to behold. And in the life and times of COVID-19, when so many other things sort of go by the boards, I think that car parade made it a very special day indeed for the seniors. And many thanks to the senior parents who were instrumental in organizing that particular part. I'm not sure if Dr. Bucky wants to add anything, but I'm very appreciative of everybody's efforts.
I would agree with you. I thought it was a very exceptional day. Got a lot of positive feedback from parents, community members, alumni. So I have a feeling that a new Nantucket tradition was born with the car parade, because this year's juniors are already starting to inquire if they can have a car parade. So great day. A lot of people contributed to making it very, very special.
And then the only other thing I would like to point out is that we do have an end of year celebration for the staff tomorrow. Thank you to Logan O'Connor, who worked with the Island Kitchen ice cream. And I believe that beginning at noon tomorrow, for a period of an hour or two, all public school staff members can go over and get an ice cream. Not quite the same gathering to recognize our retirees as we have done in the past. And I don't know, through the chair, if Logan would want to add anything to that.
Please, Logan.
I just thought I would call it an ice cream social. Somebody had mentioned that. I believe the superintendent liked the social before. So I sent it out in quotes, and I just hope that everybody will come by after they wrap up for school and they can get anything they'd like. And I just was trying to think of how we could incorporate it with the food truck, because we have the truck on campus every day and they'd be there tomorrow. But to do that was harder than to have everybody go to the ice cream bar. So Island Kitchen was very nice to open it up. And I emailed the retirees and asked them if they would come to the central office, or if they would like to have their plaque that we have had for them to pick up at Island Kitchen, so that they can have that recognition. That would be the same as annually that's done at the lunch and brunch thing. So hopefully everyone goes.
Thank you, Logan. Thank you for arranging that. Okay, Mike.
And at this time, at the chair's pleasure, I'd like to recognize Deputy Superintendent Elizabeth Hallett, who will report on remote learning update. And then maybe I will be given a minute or two to make a comment at the end of the superintendent's report.
Certainly. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Good evening. Since our last school committee meeting on May 5th, we have continued on our remote learning journey and have found ourselves finally reaching the end of the school year. As any of us can imagine, student engagement has begun to wane a little bit with the weather getting nicer, and as we've gotten closer to the last day of school. And this would happen under regular circumstances, let alone in a pandemic. That said, teachers and administrators across the district have done their very best at trying to keep things moving along and keeping children attentive and engaged. For the month of June, we tried to inject a little fun into our remaining weeks of school with some theme weeks with a challenge at the end of each week. Our first week was an art week, week 2 was a nature week, and then week 3 was music and dance. We also saw a lip sync challenge at the elementary and intermediate schools, a talent show, and a virtual drama production at CPS, which was aptly named The Show Must Go Online. An online field day at NIS with relay races and typical field day activities, and numerous other kind of out of the box ideas to try to make content enjoyable for our remaining days. On a broader scale, we have established a steady pace with remote learning throughout this closure. And we have begun to shift our focus from what remote learning looks like to what reopening schools in September will look like. Our task force committees went through another metamorphosis. You've heard me report on those before. And we have established new groups to focus on more specific issues. We have a facilities and grounds subcommittee that's thinking about what classrooms might look like if we return with a reduced capacity in the classroom, what cleaning and sanitizing protocols might look like, personal protective equipment ordering, and a variety of other important pieces to health and safety. We also have a health and safety committee, and we have brought our nurses in to be part of that, which is really important. They are helping to review those fast changing guidelines that are issued by the CDC, the state of Massachusetts, and other public health organizations. They've really helped brainstorm possible solutions as to how we can prepare and train staff when, if and when we are able to come back. We'll need to know new protocols about hand washing, wearing masks, social distancing, moving around the buildings. So they are an important group to be working on this issue. Technology has continued to be sure that our district has what it needs to be effective in case we need to prolong our remote learning environment. We had some surveys sent out to staff, and we have learned about what resources we should be maximizing with online platforms and tools. We also have a communications and front office operations committee that is considering our building protocols for visitors entering and exiting buildings, our parent drop-off, our other daily operations with movement. And so those are our logistics and communications subcommittees. We also have other groups looking at curriculum assessment and professional development needs for the district. And the subcommittees working in these areas are focusing on social and emotional learning. And that's a big one. We know that that will be a priority area for our children and adults returning in September. Curriculum standards and assessment. We need to understand where students are in the learning continuum for each grade. We need to understand where those gaps are and if there's been regression. And we need to review the current curriculum for possible modifications based on any guidance that we might receive from the Department of Education. We have a subcommittee also on equity and access, and this group is looking particularly at curriculum and instructional supports for our students with disabilities, English language learners. Also an initial look at how our curriculum needs to embrace some of the social issues that are very current, systemic racism, implicit bias, and other important areas. So while these committees have committed to this work and have started that brainstorming process, we are still waiting for preliminary guidance from Governor Baker and Commissioner Riley for September, and which we expect will come in the next few days. Fingers crossed. Another push to gather some information has been a parent survey that we released this past Wednesday for all Nantucket Public Schools parents. The survey is meant to gather parent feedback on remote learning, learn about how they feel, its successes and challenges, and some very initial thoughts about how parents feel regarding the return to school in September. While this survey has not yet closed and we haven't collected or disaggregated all of the data, I will share with you a couple of points that have stood out from the 350 responses that we have received. 60% of parents who have answered the survey said that they were working remotely from home while their children were also schooling remotely from home. 77% stated that they had sufficient bandwidth for internet use in their home for multiple users. So that's a good thing. And thank you, Jen Erickson and the tech department for assistance with that. 95% who answered said that their children participated in all or mostly all of the remote learning experiences that were offered. I think that's a pretty remarkable number. 96 have stated that they had appropriate access to learning materials during remote learning. So again, another shout out to principals and directors who did everything they could to make sure that materials were available to students. 87% said that having a clear remote learning schedule for the day helped children stay on track. 75% said that expectations for remote learning were somewhat clear to very clear. So that's an area we can always improve on. 75% also said that feedback to students from teachers was somewhat helpful to very helpful. So another area for some improvement. 81 stated that they want their children to attend if face-to-face instruction resumes in the fall. So that's a pretty large number of our parents saying that they would like their children back in school. Of course, it's not up to us. So we will do everything we can to follow what the state and the state government and the public health organizations request from us. There were some other survey questions that required some narrative answers, and parents voiced concerns about a few things. So I'll share a couple of these with you. Some high school parents, rightfully so, expressed concerns about how remote learning might be considered as their children are starting to apply for colleges and universities. I can understand their concern. Others have felt that the rigor of remote learning across the grade levels needs to be addressed. Some worry about the health and safety of students and teachers returning on a face-to-face model. Others want to know why Nantucket, which has a relatively low number of COVID-19 cases, cannot be treated differently than a larger, more urban community where COVID-19 is more of a threat. And a few also acknowledged and appreciated the immense effort that was put into shifting in-person instruction to remote learning in an incredibly short amount of time. So just a few of the responses. There were many more. We are thankful at how many parents were willing to provide us with this information, and we are expecting more to come in. They're still trickling in. It's really telling us what we have done right and the areas where we need to do better. So we thank you all for participating. It has been valuable information to us that we will use going forward. In these final days, administrators have asked their teachers to reflect of remote learning. And what we have all realized is that remote learning, no matter how good we make it, just cannot replace that value of in-person instruction. So until we get that to that moment where we can have our students back with us in our classrooms, we will continue to grow and stretch and learn how to make our instruction better, deeper, and more meaningful remotely. But we look forward to the day when we can see them again. As I mentioned before, we are about to receive official preliminary guidance from the state. This guidance is critical to us since it will define our next steps moving forward in planning for next year. In a recent call with superintendents, the commissioner stated that this preliminary guidance is still preliminary, meaning there will be more guidance coming later, mid to late July, and it could look very different based on the latest health trends, medical research, and safety regulations. He states that school districts must be more flexible and nimble as ever, as everyone navigates this ever-changing landscape of COVID-19. Patience and level-headedness will be the key to making appropriate decisions moving forward. And I want to shout out to the administrative and leadership teams and all of the teachers in the district. This has been a remarkable time for us, and I cannot say how proud I am being part of this district and seeing an incredible shift and seeing such wonderful effort being put forward by our teachers and our administrators.
Thank you, Beth. At this point, I will ask the school committee if they have any questions, although Beth has made it very clear that this is all sort of preliminary information and you've given a very in-depth report. I am looking to Steve and Tim and Zona, and I do not see any wish to. Is that a yes, Steve? Is that
It
okay?
is.
Yes, okay.
I have a couple of questions. Beth, when do you have a closing date for the parent survey?
We left it open, so we will
Okay.
collect. We will collect in the next week or two. I would imagine that once school is out, which is tomorrow, that we will see fewer and fewer people responding, but it's still open, and I'm happy to continue.
Well, 350 is still a pretty good number.
I'd say.
I guess I'd recommend that you I don't want to say lean on, remind the parents that this is available and see if we can get some further data from them. Will you be preparing and disclosing, which is probably not the right word, distributing the survey results to all of us when you deem them complete?
I think we can share in a report, certainly, and I think that's possible. I'll work with Jen Erickson and Joanne Johnson to put it in a format and make it clear.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Are there teachers on most or all of these various preparation committees and subcommittees?
Yes, there are teachers involved. They are voluntary members, and we appreciate having them. We know that some of this work will have to continue through the summer, so we have asked if they would like to continue at will, and many of them have said absolutely. So we really appreciate that. It is a lot to do, and there's a lot to plan.
So you're not planning on or haven't been asked for any kind of hourly payments such as exist elsewhere in the contract?
Currently, we are considering a compensation with professional development points. We feel that it would be something that we would hope people would take advantage of. We will consider if necessary. It's just in thinking about conservative spending going into our future year. We just want to make sure that we can address what needs to be addressed. So I'd like to see if professional development is something that people will take advantage of. And like I said, for the moment, we have had such great volunteerism, and I appreciate that. So
yeah, I appreciate the budgetary concerns, but at the same time, these teachers and or TAs, if you have them involved, and well, administrators are year round mostly, right? But the teachers have been under a lot of pressure. They've had to make a lot of changes, and to expect them to actively participate through the summer, especially when I throw in my last comment for Commissioner Riley, which is, oh God, thanks a lot. He's going to give us some information. I thought it was going to be around the 1st of June, but it might all change as of the 1st of July. We're going to want people to stay active and involved just in case.
I understand. I'll take that into consideration.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Beth. Does that conclude your report, Beth?
Yes, it does.
Thank you very much. Going back to Michael.
Thank you. I wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge some administrative team members who are leaving Nantucket Public Schools. And I want to begin with Julie Lamoli and Jamie Bailey, who are at the principal and the assistant principal at Cyrus Pierce. Want to thank them for all of their hard work, and throughout Jamie for 2 years and Julie this year, but from March to now has really been a Herculean effort. And I want to thank you both and wish you the very best. I also want to thank Michelle Bobert Brady, who is leaving Nantucket Public Schools for Scituate. And we have appreciated, Michelle, your knowledge, your expertise in the area of special education, and your ability to make sometimes very complex issues simplified for the layperson. And certainly want to reiterate Jen's comments earlier about Dr. John Buckey. John, you are intelligent and loyal and courageous and calm, and Nantucket, the community of Nantucket and the Nantucket High School will miss you, and we thank you for your great work for the past 12 years. If I may, I'd also like to address my departure. This is the last school committee meeting, and I don't anticipate watching them henceforth. I do want to thank the school committee in 2010 that brought me to Nantucket and gave me the opportunity to join the school system. Tim Lepre is the one remaining member that takes the blame or gets the credit for that. And I thank him and all the others who brought me to the shores of Nantucket. I also want to thank subsequent school committees who've provided support and funding to help us make a difference. I want to thank the administrators with whom I have worked and the staff at all levels who truly care for and faithfully serve the children of Nantucket. I don't think any superintendent can be successful without a spouse that is willing to support him or her and make sacrifices that the job sometimes demands. I know that I would not have had any measure of success in over 40 years in education without Martha. Her calm during stormy times, her ability to read me and know when to ask a question or when to just sit quietly and wait. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Finally, I want to thank the incredible community that is Nantucket, which has welcomed and embraced us. We are proud to be Whalers and happy to call Nantucket home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. And as I said earlier, we wish you the very best in your retirement. And we wish everybody else who is leaving the district, but thank you. At this time, before we get into our subcommittee reports, I have asked Steve Sordovic, this is not something that we are voting on today, but I have asked him to read two resolutions that have come to us through MASC, and we will be taking a vote at the next meeting. But Steve, would you please go ahead and read the resolutions that you have?
I will be happy to if you continue to so desire. But looking at the lateness of the hour, I'm going to suggest that you give me a day or so to finish revising them to make them local. It's been necessary to do a few things to them. And then since we're not voting on them tonight anyway, I can then, within a day or two at the most, email them to all interested parties. Logan will have them available to put in the packet for our next meeting. Is it July 7th, I think? They're just filled with whereases before we get anywhere. And I don't think we want to take the time to do that. One is asking the government to fund any mandates relating to COVID-19. And a lot of school committees have approved that particular resolution and forwarded it to the state already. The other is a little more recent, and it's anti-racism. And after, a dozen whereases, it's resolved that we continue to work on that. So I would suggest give me a day or two to finish localizing them. I'll send them to you, and they can be available to the public in plenty of time for the next meeting.
Okay. Sona and Tim, do you have any comments, if that's okay with you? You're both muted.
What do you mean by localized, Steve?
Well, we have to get our names in and our local legislative reps. I'm not going to change any of the substance or substantive content of them, but there are a lot of little tweaks I have to make, directing them to the governor and his email address and our names and who we are, and sticking Nantucket in the relevant slots, etc. That enough?
I just thought we agreed that they would just be read tonight, and then I thought you could localize them because they're going to have to be read again and then approved at the next committee. But whatever the group is for, I'm in support of whatever the majority.
Being 8:20 already. I like to talk. I'll read them if you want.
Tim?
I think it's better to sit down and be able to read before we vote on it.
agreed. We can't vote on it today because it wasn't on the agenda, but we had planned to have them read so that the community knew that we had them in hand and that we would be voting on them next week.
Well, and they know that now just from the discussion we've just had. Look, I'll be happy to read them. I've got them up on the screen.
I would like you to. Yeah, I would like you to as planned. Thank you.
You are the chair. All right, first of all, COVID-19 state funding. It's addressed to the governor, secretary of education. I'm going to insert the deputy governor, commissioner of education, various legislative people, etc. Whereas if schools are to reopen this fall in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is the responsibility of each school district to do so safely and responsibly. And whereas it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that the school district is able to pay for the enormous additional staffing, transportation, and material expenses required to do this. And whereas the state cannot expect mandatory COVID-19 safety guidelines to be followed without also ensuring that each school district has the funds required to implement these guidance, therefore let it be resolved that the state must guarantee every school district full reimbursement for whatever COVID-19 expenses are required to follow state mandates. We must ensure a statewide school reopening that is safe, responsible, and equitable. And then capped and bolded before we add our signatures and such, it says there can be no unfunded mandates for COVID-19. The anti-racism resolution will be addressed to the same people, including to our local select board, etc. Whereas, as schools have the responsibility to equip students with their civil right of obtaining a free and appropriate public education, it is the responsibility of each school to ensure that we create a welcoming community for all capped students. And whereas it is the responsibility that every district provide to all district staff, including school committee members, annual professional development on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And whereas every district will commit to recruiting and retaining a diverse and culturally responsive teaching workforce. And whereas every district will examine their policies for institutional and systemic racialized practices and implement change with sustainable policies that are evidence-based. And whereas every district will incorporate into their curriculum the history of racial oppression and works by Black authors and works from diverse perspectives. And whereas we as school district leaders can no longer remain silent to the issues of racism and hate that continue to plague our public and private institutions, resolved that Nantucket and all the school districts in the Commonwealth must guarantee that racist practices are eradicated and diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded and practiced for our students, families, faculty, and staff. We must ensure our own school culture and that of every district in the Commonwealth is anti-racist, that acknowledges that all lives cannot matter until Black lives matter. And then it will have our signatures and offices and so on and so forth. Keeping up on the mass listserv, many school districts in the Commonwealth have already approved and sent both of these resolutions. So it would be in keeping with, it's hard to say universal, but certainly the significant majority of people in the Commonwealth if we do this. I'll finish the tweaks, as I said, and send these out to all relevant parties within a day or two.
Okay, Steve, thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time to do that.
Hey, a secretary's job is never done.
Moving on to subcommittee work. Are there any reports on the subcommittee?
I'll just report on the policy. Jen, Eller, and myself are still part of the policy committee, and we are still working. Thank you, Mr. Kozar.
Thank you, Zona. Any other reports from subcommittees? No? We do not have our student council representative, and I will work with Dr. Hallett as we move in to see when that nomination will happen. Agenda for the next meeting, if we could look at the horizon. We have, Mike, would you like to take this on as your last duty?
Sure. We have a number of things scheduled for the July, I think it's July 7th meeting. We have the LPAC update by Kelly Cooney. We'll have gifts, funds, and donations report. That is the report that Martin pulls together for us each year, just showing the school committee the depth and breadth and length of donations from our generous community throughout the year. Food services update, and I think we'll have one e-policy probably to bring to the school committee for consideration. And I think at the reorganization meeting, it was determined that the subcommittees and task force assignments. So we'll be bringing that forward for a look, and then hiring update that Beth will give you at that point, and Student Opportunity Act plan. That's sort of been set aside by the commissioner with everything else going on in the pandemic. But that's possible that could be reported on at the first meeting in July. So quite a few things coming up. And then usually the school committee has had one meeting in July and then a retreat. And I'm sure that the chair and superintendent will develop a schedule for that. And then August, typically you go back to 2 meetings in the month of August.
Madam Chairman, if I may, just to be pedantic, the agenda will also include those 2 resolutions.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Just a couple of comments I would like to make before I ask for an adjournment is I attended the 2 protests that happened one was out in Tom Nevers and then Main Street. And then the second one was on Main Street. And I couldn't be more proud of our students who really came together and did an outstanding speeches, and also an outstanding ability to bring such a large community together, both out at Tom Nevers and in town. And I feel the energy. I think we all feel the energy of moving forward and being able to make some significant and important changes. And you will see when you look at our subcommittee assignments that we have added a diversity subcommittee, and we look forward to working with the town of Nantucket as they too are putting together a committee. And it would be our ideal to be able to work with them on that work. Channel 18 needs a shout out. If you had been there for part of the, if you've watched the graduation, they took the footage of 142 graduates, not only each of them receiving their diploma, but also families and students being interviewed after they had graduated. And they had a very short window of time to get this together. And they had a beautiful presentation ready for us on Saturday. And so I know that they are working diligently, and I know their days are full with other community needs, but I really wanted to recognize them and say thank you, because they really put a beautiful program together. And that's it for me. Are there any other comments from other committee members?
Well, Madam Chair, since you've opened the floor to shout outs, as it were,
Really?
I just want to say, I do think that graduation was spectacular. Most pleasant Saturday afternoon I've spent in a while, I can tell you. And to the editors and to all the people who did the work to put that presentation together. I mean, I'm emailing them separately anyway, but I think they deserve shout outs, plural, for that and everything they've been doing since this crisis started. It's fantastic, and we need to be very appreciative of everything that they're doing. I'd also like to add a comment about diversity in our schools, having been there for 24 years. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't look at everything we're doing and see if we can do it better, but I've always been impressed with our staff's recognition of the diversity of our students and our accepting of that diversity. We're all well aware at this point that roughly half of our student body is in that diverse category, non-Caucasian as it were. And I think our staff has responded to that wonderfully through the years. As I said, we can get better, but I wanted to give that a shout out as well.
Thank you, Steve, for your point of view. Thank you. Zona, any comments before Tim?
I agree with Steve. Our staff really does try to address those issues. I believe there's a diversity club that's been around for a while. I think it could use a lot more support. We're not perfect by any means. Nobody's perfect. We're human beings, but we do put forth that effort, and we see that we still have some work to do just from being at the protests of our students. So keep that in mind. And I know we are all hopefully on the same page, because we are all about the students and what's in their best interest. And thank you.
Thank you, Zona. Thank you. Tim?
Set.
Okay. May I ask for a motion to adjourn?
So I'd like to make that motion.
And Steve seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Zona Butler, yeah, aye.
Tim Lepre.
Aye.
Aye.
Steve Soderbeck. Dr. Bucky, I just wanted to try and make the record of the longest school committee, as this is your final farewell. Thank you, everybody.
I appreciate the effort.
And we appreciate you, John. You'll be missed.
Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.